Hey guys, welcome to the channel. This is Chris with Flex Plumbing, and this is a brand new channel. Today's my first video, and basically I'm starting this channel because I want to give back to the young men and women who are in the trades and coming up in the trades. I am a plumber. I've been a plumber for 25 years. I started plumbing when I was 17, and I've had a lot of people give back to me through the years, and I have a ton of experience, and I want to start making videos to help young men and women who are in the trades and who are thinking about getting into the trades, have already started in the trades, and give them my help and tips and wisdom and my experience to help them to succeed, or somebody who's maybe thinking about getting into the trades and want to know the pros and cons and what life's like and what experiences are out there and what you might have to look forward to in the trades, and go from there. So like I said, my name is Chris Williamson. I'm here in Southern California. I currently own and run Flex Plumbing. I've been plumbing since I was 17. I have a little over 25 years experience. So basically this is my journey. When I was 17, I was in high school, and I didn't know really what I wanted to do. So my plan was to join the military, and I was going to become a cop after that. That was kind of my dream at the time, at that age. And so I graduated high school. I was living out my summer, having like my last fun summer. I was working full time for like a mailbox, etc. or something. And my stepdad called me and said, hey, I have a job opportunity for you. So he was working for a HVAC company. He was a foreman for them. They were building a school in the town I live in, and so they needed a helper for the summer. And so he got me the job. I went down, got a hard hat, got some boots, got some crummy ass tools, and next day or 2 days later, I was off and running. I show up on the first job, first day. The guy puts me in a cart, drives me out to the front of the school. It was already like halfway over at that point, or halfway through the job. So they were like pretty much wrapping up top out, getting ready to start finish. And he gives me a shovel and a digging bar and takes me out to the hydrant and says, hey, there's 6 or 7 hydrants down the road. I need you to dig them all up and get down to the spool, and so that we can replace it and put a breakaway spool in. And I didn't know what a breakaway spool was, but so he gives me the shovel, and I think I sat there for an hour, hour and a half, picking around, trying to get it to dig, and nothing. Talk about feeling like, okay, this isn't gonna work. The guy shows up, he kind of gives me a little bit of shit, and then he starts digging it up, digs it up in like 5 minutes, kind of gives me a little tips, and I'm off and running. I'm plumbing. I'd spend my whole summer working for them. The plan was still to finish off the summer, and then I was going to go to the military, and that was that. And then 9/11 hit. I was on a job site that day, and I remember all the guys getting around the trucks and listening to the radios and just and hearing it all, and then getting home that day, watching it all on the news and seeing all the videos, and we all been there and seen that. And so we're at war. I have a job, I'm making really good money, and at that point the company approaches me and says, hey, if you want to continue working here, you need to become an apprentice. So that means I need to go to school, I need to register for the school and become a registered apprentice, and that's how prevailing wage jobs work for the most part. So here in California at least. So I say, you know what? I don't know if I really want to go to war at this point. I'm making good money. I still have that as a backup. And so let's go ahead and join this apprenticeship. So I joined. It's called Associated Builders and Contractors. The company I was working for was non-union, so it was a non-union school. I didn't have to pay for it. It was paid for by the journeymen, the people who worked for the company throughout all the prevailing wage jobs that were part of that school. So now I'm going to school one night a week for 4 hours. And so some of you that are already doing it, you know what it's like, but you're sitting in class, you're doing, you're doing projects, they're having you do soldering or whatever your trade is. And so it's a good thing. It's, what I would say, and we'll touch into this in future videos, is you need to take school important. It is very important. But so I'm going to school full time. At that point, I have to have surgery on my shoulder from a baseball injury from high school. So I end up going on disability, not knowing it at the time. When I go back to my company, I have to go through the school, and I have to go back to who's next on the books. So at that point, the company they told me that I was going to, I had heard of and heard lots of bad rumors as far as like they were really hard on their guys and it was hard to work for them. And You know, they fire a lot of guys. And so I was a little nervous going into it. The company I had been for was a little easier, kickback. They overman their guys and overman the job. So I never really experienced any like toughness as far as that. So I was a little nervous going in. I start with this company. I end up going under a foreman named Roger, and it was a blessing. That company and Roger specifically in the very beginning just helped mold me into the plumber I am today, as far as like work ethic and what it takes and who it takes it from and what my role is and where I needed to be and how I needed to do it. I mean, just all of it. You know, the little things like being the first one on the job. You know, when you're an apprentice and you're just starting out, you know, you need to make your headway, and you're the lowest paid guy on the job, but you have the least experience. So you need to be able to prove your worth and why you should be there. So little things like showing up early and having the trailer open before anybody else gets there and pulling material. And right, obviously this is all for new construction jobs, but you know, there's ways to do things to set yourself ahead of and apart from the other guys that you're competing with for a job. So, you know, I'm learning all those things. He's taking me under his wing. I'm learning how to operate. I'm learning how to lay out. I'm learning how to deal with, with inspectors and inspections and deal with, you know, all of that, other trades. And so I get all of that experience. I get to a point where I'm running guys, you know, journeyman for him, and I'm laying out, and I'm running jobs for Roger at this point, and he's taught me and he's done everything he's done. I'm a third-year apprentice at this point. The owner of the company calls me and says, hey, we're going to make you a journeyman a year and a half or so early. So starting today, you're getting journeyman's pay. And so I went from being a third-year apprentice to a journeyman overnight. And at that point, it lasted 2 or 3 days, and they pulled me off. So yeah, they pulled me off the job, and at that point, they put me with the superintendent of the company. His name is Armando, and little did I know that me and Armando were about to come really close, and he was going to end up being my next mentor in my journey. He took me under his wing. At that point, like I said, they had just made me a journeyman, and I thought I knew everything, and I was the king shit, and I'm about to run things. And Armando put me to school. He showed me that I wasn't shit, and I didn't know shit, and I wasn't even close to knowing shit. So I went through his training, and now I'm not only learning plumbing, but I'm learning leadership. I'm learning how to run crews. I'm learning how to order material. I'm learning how to look ahead. You know, a big thing in our trade, especially in new construction, is looking ahead, and not just, you know, what we're doing today has already been determined a long time ago. You know, I'm looking 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 months from now, and what I need and what I need to lay out. So he's teaching me those things. He's teaching me even more work ethic and how to control guys and how to deal with situations with guys. And so I go under his wing, and he grinds on me. So at that point, I start, you know, helping on finishing some jobs, and then eventually I get to being a foreman on a school that we're just finishing. So I'm just setting all the finish and just kind of wrapping up the job. And that kind of becomes my role for a year and a half or so, is where I'm kind of like the cleanup guy. I'm coming in, I'm getting these jobs finished and out of the way, and material off the site and closed out, and, you know, punch lists and all of that. So I kind of become that guy, and I do a couple of those jobs, and then they give me my first elementary. So I do my first elementary from underground to finish, run a whole job, whole crew, all by myself, obviously with my mentor above me. And that's where it just goes. I do a couple elementaries. I get into a middle school, and then it leads into doing high schools and doing giant high schools. And then I get to a point where I'm running multiple jobs at a time with other foremen underneath me, and I got different crews going here, and I'm having and now I'm learning different management skills and how to do it on a bigger scale. I end up working for that company for about 15 years. Towards the end, Armando ends up leaving for better things, and I have some issues with some other management in the company, so I end up leaving after 15 years. I go to another company that does pretty much the exact same thing. Everything goes good there for a few years. I'm running some big schools for them, learning they do little things different, but learning a lot from them as well. And then at that point in my career, I get an opportunity to switch from non-union prevailing wage companies that only did schools and government buildings and prisons, military, that kind of stuff. So now I go to a union company that's doing basically the same thing, but working for the union. I don't have to join the union because at that point, I'm only management. So I didn't have to ever join the union. So I never was part of the union, but I got to deal with all the reps and deal with all their stuff, their school and how they deal with things. And so I got a good wrap on how the union works, and got to work with the different unions around here in Southern California. So I worked for them, and I was a project manager, superintendent for that company. So I had, up to 20 projects underneath me at one point, all schools, millions and millions of dollars worth of projects going at one time. I was in charge of hiring all the foremen, hiring all the guys, firing, payroll, change orders, BIM. I'm in charge of, material orders, purchasing guy, layout, deliveries, all of it. So I'm running these jobs, having to do billings and do, RFIs and making sure everything's getting done. And so I get the experience of running basically, I think I had 100 guys underneath me at one point. Got to hire a superintendent and get the superintendent working underneath me and be able to work through a superintendent. And just dealing with all the aspects of the plumbing from the management side of it, and getting my feet wet on, bidding and pricing things out, and learning how to, bid things correctly and how to put hours and what it takes. And so over the years at this point, I know how long it takes to do certain things. And so all of that experience came together as a project manager. And then I got to a point in my career where it was kind of like I was at the top. There wasn't really much higher for me to go other than changing everything completely or starting my own company. At that point, my stepdad had a HVAC residential service company that he had for about 20 years at that point. He had gotten his plumbing license and had asked me to come work underneath him, and with him, I should say, and start a plumbing division. But at that point, I was doing so well in my career and things were looking up, and I was still learning, and I'm making a ton of money. And so at that point, I passed. And so I got to this next point in my journey where I either needed to start my own thing or look into something like this. So I hit my family back up, and we opened a plumbing division under his HVAC company and start advertising to all his customers. And I am off and running in the service side. And this was a huge transition for me because it went from everything being about speed and accuracy and how much pipe can you put in, not worrying about what I look like or how dirty I get or having to deal with customers, right? It's all bid jobs. So basically, I'm there to feed me. And so it's kind of a fuck everybody else mentality sometimes. And so it's a different world. And then you get into the service world, and now I'm having to deal with customer service and having to deal with homeowners and having to deal with smaller projects, but having to deal with money, right? Tell somebody, hey, this is gonna cost this. Learning how to price myself, learning how to give options. I started like every other residential plumber. I'm just doing Band-Aids and I'm just repairing this and not charging enough. And then I had to learn that okay, I'm not doing a service to the customer by doing it this way. And so by self-learning and talking to people and picking the brains of other techs and becoming friends with the manager of the part house and learning how other guys are doing things, and just through my own dedication, learning service side. So I build this service side up for my dad and the company, and everything's going well. We're starting to get calls, we're starting to reproduce, customers are coming back. I'm learning customer service and how to give the customer the best service for what they're paying. And everything's going well, and my dad decided to sell the company, and he wanted to go the private equity route. So he sold to private equity. Private equity came in, bought the company, and basically folded us into their company. So this is what private equity does. They come in, they buy mom and pop shops or smaller shops, they fold them in, rebrand them into their company, and they just keep growing and growing and growing. When that first happened, my plan was to leave at that point, but I got with the new owner. From the private equity company. He flew me out, and we had a good time out in Vegas with him. And I kind of got to see his vision and what he was trying to do there. And so I decided then to stick around and just to get the experience and to learn from on the residential service side from a big private equity money phase, right? We had a whole team all across the country that anything I needed help-wise. And so tool-wise, money-wise, everything behind us, advertising, we had it all. So I spent the last few years working for them and building their plumbing division out with their help and all of that. And now I've gotten to a point where I have broken off on my own. I have started my own company, Flex Plumbing. And so I'm doing residential service. Like I said, I've been in the trade for 25 years. And all of that has brought me to this point in my journey. And at this point in my journey, where I want to be is I want to be a leader in the industry, and I want to work with young men and women who are getting into the trade, like I said, or already in the trade and just need some mentorship or guidance. I know a lot of times on these job sites, we will get guys that won't even train young people because they're afraid that at some point they're going to take their job. I think that mentality has gotten better over the last few years, but I think we're all recognizing that there's not enough good people in the trades. There is a lot of money to be made here. There's a lot of experience. I feel like at this point, I could pretty much do anything in the plumbing industry, right? If I want to go work for a water district, a water company, a maintenance guy at a prison or something, go work for the gas company, go work for the sewer, the department, there's so many things that I could go do now with this trade and with this skill that I've learned that you can't take that away from me. No matter where I go in the world, they need plumbing. I've had opportunities over the year. I've had offers to go to Africa and work for 3 months at a time and make a ton of money doing plumbing. And so there's just so many opportunities if you're willing to put the hard work in and learn the trade. So I want to continue to bring these videos to you guys, and just, we're going to go over topics on how we can get better and what things we're looking for, especially, what is leadership looking for out of you as a young tradesman, and what kind of things that you can do to help improve yourself, and things that you can hopefully maybe pass some steps that I had to take, that, I had to learn hard lessons sometimes from making the wrong mistake. And hopefully you can learn from those, from my stories and my experiences. And continue to grow this. And I want to develop a community of young men and women who are in the trade that are bonding together and helping learn together, and create a safe place for questions. And sometimes on the job site, especially when you're getting paid, right? It's hard to learn on the job because I'm paying you a wage for a job that I need you to do. And if I'm having to teach you, then it's kind of so. Learning a lot of times is on our own time, on our own bread, and our own backs. And so we have to get that mentality of, if I want to be the best at what I do, and I want this to be something that I can provide for my family for the rest of my life, I need to be the best at it. And I need to put the hours in, right? The 10,000 hour rule, right? If you're not putting those hours in and getting that extra, you're never going to be who you want to be. You're always going to be half-assing it. So I want to bring you videos, and I want to help us to get there where you guys want to be. If you guys have anything that you are struggling with or questions, let's get into it. So like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you for more videos.